Frank Fritz, the beloved co-host of American Pickers, wasn't just a man who dug through America's forgotten treasures. He became one himself. On September 30th, 2024, at the age of 60, he bid farewell to the world, leaving behind more than just memories. His unexpected passing sent shockwaves through his family and friends, but what truly left them reeling wasn't just their grief. It was the staggering fortune he left behind. A fortune so immense it would redefine his legacy, ignite family tensions, and unveil surprises no one saw coming. But before we dive into the millions he amassed, let's rewind the clock and uncover the final moments of a man who lived life on the road, turning rust into gold. Frank's declining health was no secret in the years leading up to his passing. After suffering a stroke in 2022, complications from that cerebral infarction ultimately resulted in his death 2 years later. TMZ reported that his death certificate cited the cause as late sequela of cerebral infarction, a clinical term indicating the lasting damage his body couldn't overcome. Yet that wasn't his only battle. Frank was also dealing with aortic stenosis, a heart condition that restricts proper blood flow. This double blow left him with an uphill fight, but even the toughest pickers can't bargain with fate. However, Frank's story wasn't just about fading away. It was also about mending fences, particularly with his longtime friend and former co-host, Mike Wolfe. Their friendship had roots as deep as middle school, built on a shared passion for picking and the common experience of growing up without fathers. But when fame and fortune enter the picture, even the strongest bonds can crack. By 2021, their relationship had reached a breaking point. In an interview with The Sun, Frank was blunt in his frustrations, claiming that American Pickers had become a one-man show. He compared their dynamic to Steven Tyler and Aerosmith, saying, "The show has tilted towards him 1000%. It's like you've got Aerosmith and there's Steven Tyler. I found my spot, I'm second, and he's number one." Then came the twist no one expected. Frank's stroke in 2022 became the catalyst for a reconciliation. By 2023, the two were speaking again, and Mike refused to let old grudges stand in the way. "I got the call that he wasn't doing well," Mike told People, "and I just feel blessed that I was able to be there." Mike described those final moments with a tenderness that could soften even the hardest hearts. "I was with him for about an hour before he passed, holding his hand and rubbing his chest when he took his last breath," he said. "I closed his eyes with my fingers." Let that sink in. A friendship that had endured more miles than most marriages, tested by success, struggle, and time, found its final chapter in the quietest, most intimate way. Mike assured Frank that he loved him and let go of any lingering resentment. As Frank held on for his last moments, Mike whispered, "Just go find your mom. Go find her right now." At that point, it wasn't about antiques, TV ratings, or past disputes. It was simply about two old friends making peace before the final curtain fell. But Frank Fritz wasn't just a man with a touching story. He was someone who turned childhood curiosity into a multi-million-dollar legacy. Born in Davenport, Iowa, Frank had an early knack for collecting rocks, beer cans, anything that caught his eye. But it was during his 25-year career as a fire inspector, checking fire safety equipment, that he realized he could turn his love for rare finds into a full-time business. By the time American Pickers debuted on the History Channel in 2010, Frank had already honed his skills as a seasoned picker. Traveling alongside Mike Wolfe and Danielle Colby, he scoured the country for hidden treasures in barns, garages, and junkyards. The show quickly became a sensation, striking a chord with viewers who loved the thrill of discovery and the nostalgia of forgotten Americana. Over 22 seasons and 300 episodes, American Pickers was never just about antiques. It was also a showcase of Frank's sharp instincts and deep passion. His ability to spot value in what others saw as junk made him a household name. And it wasn't just TV that boosted his success. Frank penned 2 best-selling books, American Picker's Guide to Picking in 2011 and How to Pick Vintage Motorcycles in 2013, solidifying his reputation as an expert in the antique world. Beyond the screen and books, Frank also ran Frank Fritz Finds, his popular antique shop in Savannah, Illinois, which attracted fans and collectors alike. By the time of his passing, Frank had built a net worth estimated at $6 million, a remarkable fortune for a man who once scoured junkyards for rusty signs and vintage motorcycles. But here's the big question. What happens to all that wealth now? When someone leaves behind millions, the aftermath isn't just about grief, it's also about who stands to inherit the fortune. Frank's passing didn't just leave people mourning, it reshaped the financial landscape for those closest to him in ways they never anticipated. But not all emotions were the same. While some cried out of deep appreciation, others grieved for chances they never took. Frank had always been known for his kindness, and those who had been part of his life understood that he had made provisions for them before the end. Yet, amidst the gratitude, there was also regret, the sorrow of unresolved conflicts and words that would never be spoken. And then, as always, came the tensions that money brings, because when millions are involved, even the tightest-knit families can find themselves at odds. But what did Frank's will actually state? Who would be the ones to benefit from his hard-earned wealth? Would it be family members, close friends, or perhaps a name no one expected? Frank had made sure to legally document his final wishes a full year before he passed, filing his will in court on October 23, 2023. Though his health had been on a steady decline following his stroke in 2022, few anticipated how quickly things would unravel. Yet, if there was one thing Frank refused to do, it was leave his finances to chance. According to the U.S. Sun, the conservator appointed after his stroke, Midwest One Bank, was also named as the executor of his estate. But while the will itself remained sealed, keeping its contents a mystery, what was undeniable was that his $6 million estate had been legally settled just weeks after his passing, with final approval granted on October 18, 2024. To truly understand how things reached that point, we have to rewind to July 2022, when Frank suffered a devastating stroke at his farmhouse in Iowa. This wasn't just another medical setback. It was a life-altering event that took control away from him and placed it in the hands of others. His condition deteriorated to the extent that he could no longer manage basic needs, food, shelter, or even medical decisions. It wasn't long before his loved ones took legal action, filing for conservatorship and guardianship, which effectively placed his affairs under external management. Midwest One Bank took charge of his finances, while his longtime companion, Chris Davis, assumed the role of his guardian, making decisions regarding his medical care and daily life. And then there was the matter of his most valued possessions, his vast and carefully curated collection of antiques, vintage motorcycles, and memorabilia, stored across multiple buildings on his property. For Frank, these weren't just objects. They were tangible pieces of history, a lifetime of dedication and passion. The conservatorship documents revealed that while an exact inventory had yet to be completed, most of his collection would remain intact, with select pieces set aside to supply his antique store, Fritz Finds in Savannah, Illinois. But when it came to the people left in the aftermath of his death, things got more complicated. Frank had never tied the knot. Though rumors had circulated in 2021 that he had secretly married his longtime girlfriend, Diane. The truth? They had already separated before he passed, their relationship crumbling under betrayal and heartbreak. In an interview from July 2021, Frank had shared that he once planned to marry Diane, even purchasing a home for their future together. However, while he was on the road filming American Pickers, he found out that she had been seeing someone else behind his back. "It broke me, emotionally, mentally, in every way," he admitted. To cope with the devastation, he turned to alcohol, a choice that led him down a dark path of addiction. Diane, on the other hand, had a completely different version of the story. "What he's saying isn't the truth," she told The Sun. "If he's trying to paint me as the villain, of course, I'll deny it, because that's not what happened." But whether or not her side held weight, the damage had already been done. By 2019, their relationship was over, and Frank was left to rebuild a life that suddenly seemed uncertain. Without a spouse or children, Frank's closest bonds were with his longtime friends, people like Chris Davis, who had taken legal responsibility for him after his stroke, and Jerry Gendro, a dear friend who openly shared details about Frank's final days. He felt absolutely terrible, Jerry recalled, describing how he would visit Frank in the nursing home and see how helpless he had become. One whole side of his body just wouldn't work. He'd try to lift his arm and it would just fall. The reality of being bedridden was crushing for Frank, someone who had spent his life on the move, and it weighed on him in ways words couldn't fully capture. His frustration was evident, even though he struggled to express himself. Some days were easier, but overall his health continued to decline. Jerry summed it up with heartbreaking honesty. "I really believe Frank could have lived longer if he had the will to fight." And then, of course, there was Mike Wolfe, the man who had been his closest confidant for decades, but had also, at times, felt like his greatest adversary. Their friendship had been through every stage: childhood camaraderie, professional partnership, estrangement, and finally, reconciliation. By the time Frank's health deteriorated beyond repair, the two had managed to rebuild their bond. But emotional closure didn't necessarily answer the burning question: was Mike named in the will? With the legal documents sealed, no one could say for certain where Frank's wealth was going. What was known, however, was that Frank's financial legacy was deeply connected to his love for antiques and his successful store, Fritz Finds. His friend Jerry hinted at the possibility of an auction, a move that could ensure his prized collection found its way to those who genuinely appreciated its value. "That's what I would do," Jerry suggested. With his fan base, an auction would be massive. As the antique community buzzed with speculation over the fate of Frank's collection, those who had truly known him, his chosen family, his lifelong friends, grappled with the deeper reality of his loss. The conversation surrounding Frank wasn't solely about money. It was about the mark he left on those who knew him. The man whose struggles defined his final years more than any amount of wealth ever could. His battle with addiction wasn't a brief detour. It was a relentless journey born not only from heartbreak, but from years of chronic pain due to Crohn's disease and a fractured back. Surgery in 2019 was supposed to be a step toward healing, but instead it became just another hurdle in an already uphill fight. Painkillers initially offered Frank an escape, but what began as relief soon turned into dependency. By the time he exited American Pickers in 2020, those closest to him were well aware of his struggles. Among them, Mike Wolfe had perhaps the clearest view of the damage addiction was inflicting. Once he got hooked on opioids, everything took a downward turn, Mike confessed, recalling his efforts to help. Interventions were staged, rehab was encouraged, and the hope for Frank's recovery never truly faded. Yet as time passed, one had to wonder, what price had Frank truly paid, both financially and emotionally, for his years of health battles? At the peak of his career, Frank's financial standing was solid, with a net worth of approximately $6 million. However, as his health deteriorated, a significant portion of that fortune was consumed by medical expenses. This wasn't just about routine checkups or occasional prescriptions, it was about survival. After his stroke in 2022, Frank faced staggering medical and home care costs, reaching approximately $30,000 per month. That's an eye-watering $360,000 per year, an amount that even a successful reality star would struggle to sustain indefinitely. These costs extended beyond hospital visits. They included 24/7 nursing care, physical therapy, and specialized treatments necessary to manage both the effects of his stroke and the ongoing battles with Crohn's disease and aortic stenosis. His beloved Iowa farmhouse, once filled with rare antiques and classic motorcycles, underwent modifications to accommodate his condition. Wheelchair ramps, medical equipment, and home aids transformed his retreat into more of a rehabilitation facility than the personal sanctuary it had once been. Situated in the heart of LeClaire, Iowa, Frank's home was as unassuming and down-to-earth as the man himself. Purchased in 2010 for $130,000, the two-bedroom, one-bath property spanned 1,660 square feet and sat on a modest 3/4-acre lot. Over time, its value tripled, reaching approximately $392,000 by 2024. Next door, Frank also owned an additional parcel of land designated for single-family use, further enhancing his real estate holdings. Yet, even as property values climbed, they weren't enough to counterbalance the relentless wave of medical bills. His cherished farmhouse, once a proud symbol of his achievements, silently bore witness to his decline. But Frank's story was never just about money or possessions. His true legacy lay in the passion he sparked in others and the countless lives he touched. American Pickers wasn't just another television show. It became a cultural movement. His expertise in antiques and his genuine, no-nonsense personality transformed forgotten relics into sought-after treasures. He had a gift for uncovering value in the overlooked. Whether it was a rusty gas station sign, a vintage toy, or an old motorcycle left to decay in a barn. Frank believed that every item had a history, and every history deserved to be shared. Yet, beyond the antiques, Frank's journey resonated because he was relatable. He wasn't just a polished television personality. He was the guy next door with a keen eye for hidden gems and a heart full of warmth and laughter. His openness about battling Crohn's disease endeared him to countless fans who saw reflections of their own struggles in his story. His fight with addiction and the heartbreak that followed proved that even our heroes aren't immune to life's hardest lessons. Following his departure from American Pickers, Frank remained active in the antique world, running his store, Fritz Finds, in Savannah, Illinois. Though his health declined, his passion never wavered. His shop became a meeting ground for collectors, enthusiasts, and fans, all drawn to the magic he saw in every forgotten relic. Now, even in death, that legacy is poised to continue. Plans are already in motion to auction off parts of his prized collection, an effort that not only honors his lifelong love for antiques, but also seeks to recover some of the financial burden his medical expenses left behind. Fans will soon have the opportunity to own a piece of Frank's legacy, transforming his lifelong work into treasured keepsakes that will be passed down for generations. But beyond the objects, beyond the fame, what Frank leaves behind is something much greater, a powerful reminder that life is about the adventure, not just the final destination. Success, he showed us, isn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the depth of your passion. Even in the face of adversity, he demonstrated resilience, humility, and the unwavering belief in moving forward, no matter how rough the road may be. Frank once shared a simple philosophy: life gives back what you put into it. So if you give little, don't expect much in return. And he gave everything. To his craft, to his friendships, and to the things that brought him joy. Though medical costs may have diminished his financial wealth, his true fortune was never measured in dollars. It was found in the stories he uncovered, the inspiration he provided, and the people whose lives he forever changed. And while his path was anything but smooth, Frank navigated it with laughter, heart, and a spirit that remains unforgettable.